I'm going to be going over just a few things about QA in general. Not so much support, but just stuff that I've sort of picked up over the years, and hopefully that can help some of you guys while you're doing your work. Can I just get a quick show of hands? How many people here are actually developers in some way? Yeah, of course, Denise is raising her hand in the back, and she is not, she's not a developer. Are you? It's okay. And how many of you are actually programmers in some way? Okay, that's about 80% of, or 90% of everyone. That's a good sign. So, can I just ask you guys, what do you think QA is? Anyone? Does anyone want to throw out there, what do they think QA is as a whole? What, could you say that a bit louder? Oh, so checking the quality of some sort of product in some way, right? Is that all it is, or do you think there's something else? Oh, okay. So if I was to ask a question like, do you think a person in QA in a games company, for example, is that the same as the person who does QA for the National Rail? Do they have any commonalities in their job, do you think? No, I'm seeing people say. Right. Okay. Okay. Right, so do you think both roles, there's some sort of feedback going on between the person working and their boss, right? So if I was to say that, if I was to define QA as a process to give a certain level of quality, would you all agree? No? It's not? You'd say yes, right? Can I say that? Is that okay? Yeah, but I'd say my definition, to give it broadly, I would say that QA is definitely a process of guaranteeing a level of quality, right? Regardless of what you're doing. I mean, there's no one here that would get on an airplane that wasn't tested, right? I mean, that's just not plausible, right? I mean, unless you're a daredevil or something, right? So you definitely want it checked in some way, right? And it's not the same in every industry, really. It's slightly different, but without thinking about it, you know that it's needed, but you're not really sure what it is, right? I mean, what does your guy in QA do every day? Does he sit there and play games and have fun? No, it's not fun, okay? It's not fun. I mean, take your favorite movie, right? Your favorite movie, it's very straightforward. Take your favorite movie, take 3 minutes of that movie, and picture someone watching that 3 minutes for 8 hours every day for 6 months. Yeah, that's what I used to do, right? So very quickly you see that QA can be very laborious, right, at the same time, right? And what you really need to see is that QA really does start from the beginning, right? Would you say that's true? I mean, if you were building an airplane, when would you test it? As soon as possible. Why? Yeah, but why wouldn't Ryanair just purchase the airplane, put it into Heathrow and say, go? Well, I hope they don't do that. I know I'm being a bit leery and a bit funny here, but there's a point I'm trying to make, right? It really needs to start right at the beginning, right? Before you've even started your project, whether it's you and your friend that's making a game, whether it's your boss has asked you to do a piece of work and you're on your own and they've left you to your own devices, you really need to think in some way, how am I going to manage this project? And overall, that's what QA is, right? The two roles are overlapping. So before you've even started your application, you really need to be thinking, okay, well, I've said to my boss, this is going to take 6 months. Was that realistic, right? Why was that realistic, right? And without having an idea of a management process, you're really going to quickly find that 6 months that you said wasn't exactly a lie, but you didn't really plan all the way through, right? Now, there are two very common methodologies used, and I'm going to stick to the games industry and IT industry if you guys don't mind, right? The two main models that are used is the waterfall model and the agile model for development, okay? The waterfall model is just a fancy way of describing, I'm going to do task A. Once that's complete, I'm going to move on to task B. Once that's complete, I'm going to move on to task C. And the results from the first one feed into the second one. The results from the second one feed into the first one. And at the end, I have this static product at the end, right? You don't go back to change anything. Once it's done, it's done. So you could probably apply that to an airplane, right? You wouldn't go back and then start changing things with the airplane, right? Unless it was broken. Where that differs from agile is, I have a product, I know I want to build. I'm not really sure what it's going to do or how it's going to work, but I know that it wants to be an airplane. I know that it wants to be about 15 feet long and have 2 wings and a couple engines and fly me somewhere, but I don't know how many passengers it's going to fit. I don't know what type of wheels I'm going to buy on it, but I know roughly what it is, right? And early on, you really need to identify which one of these your categories you're going to fall into. I'd say most people here, by default, you're going to fall into agile because you don't know what kind of application you're going to do. You don't know everything about that. You don't know for certain what that game's going to do. Your designer could come up to you tomorrow and say, well, I don't like this level. There weren't enough zombies. There were too many aliens. I need to have some unicorns in there. Please add that, right? That would that fit into a waterfall? Right? That wouldn't fit, would it? It wouldn't fit because the purpose of this is you do the task once and that's it, you don't go back. The purpose of this is you're continually changing, right? And this is sort of, if you were to look at it, this is pretty much what it looks like. With the waterfall one, you've just got each separate stage, and then at the end, you're just maintaining it. And this is the complete product. Whereas agile, there are several iterations going on here, and within each one, you're just continually going back on the same thing. So you implement your level, someone checks it over, and then maybe they found something, and then you reiterate it and you do it again. Now, as I say, you need to know this because where does QA fit into this waterfall model? If I was to give a QA person a job, where do they go? I know it says testing here, but is that correct? In every step. But doesn't that defeat the point of waterfall, where you do one task and then complete it?
You've got to make sure that task is correct.
Right, I agree with you, but that defeats the point of waterfall as a whole, which is why agile came into being in the first place, right? And this goes beyond just QAing anything. It goes into your daily life in all honesty, right? If you were to purchase a bike tomorrow, right? I said to you, here's £300, go and buy me a bike. It needs to be a BMX, and here's the model. Once you purchase that bike, what's the first thing that you would do? I know what I would do, but what would you do? If I was to give you £300 and you didn't rob me, what's the first thing you would do? Like, you've just purchased the bike, you're in the shop right now, what would you do? Test it right away. Anything else? What would someone else do? Yep. So you want to test every piece to make sure that it's working? Okay. Well, just take it home to your kids. Those aren't wrong, but what I would do is I would look at the receipt that the person gave me, and I would check that that matches the thing that I just purchased. Because if I bring that back to my boss, and he says, Kevin, that was the wrong bike, and I go back to the shop, and they look at it and see it's the wrong receipt, I now have to pay my boss £300. Like, that cashier's not going to give the money to my boss, right? And that same thing applies to you while you're working, right? If your boss says to you, hey, look, go and implement this functionality, and you just say yes, And then 2 days later, your boss sees it and says, hey, wait a minute, I just wanted you to add 2 buttons. I didn't ask you to change how everything loaded and add these new menus. I didn't. Do you see where I'm going with this? And this is why, if you can identify which of these you fall under, and hopefully it's this one, I can't stress that enough. I hope that all of you should be doing Agile. But if you're doing this model right here, by the time you've finished that brief iteration, you've already gone back to your boss and he's checked it, right? As opposed to this model, you spent 16 hours, 2 days on it, and he says it's wrong. This one, you spend 4 hours on it, you give it back to your boss and he says it's wrong. You've just saved yourself 8 hours plus worth of work compared to the two, right? So it's very important that early on you understand your development cycle and where everything fits in, right? Because it's very quick to see the difference between good QA and bad QA, right? If you worked for McDonald's and I said we need QA here, we need to check that these burgers are healthy, is it a good idea for me to hire someone to become a burger taster whose job it is every hour to eat a burger and check that it's okay? Is that a valid job? Honestly. Yes, okay, what the one person that says it's a valid job. It's not a good job, all right? It's not a valid job because it's a redundant task, right? The testing for those meats were done when they imported the meat into the country, so you don't necessarily need to test it again, right? That overall is bad QA. That's redundant and it's a waste of time and it wastes money. But what is good is to check in the morning the sell-by date of that meat, right? So that's a slight difference there, right? So, and the first thing you'll think is, okay, well, how do I apply this to this game that I'm making with me and my cousin? We're just making a little zombie game. We don't need all this stuff about meat at McDonald's. We don't need any of that, right? Well, you need to check your work, but you don't necessarily need to build it every hour and send it to each other using Dropbox. Every hour you're making a build and sending it to each other. But maybe it is practical to send a build to one another once a week, every Thursday at 12 o'clock, right? And what you start to form is a structured process, right? The two of you are communicating and you know that every Thursday I'm getting the build, it's doing this, and now I have a report. So when something breaks, you know that, okay, it worked last week, so whatever broke in the last 7 days, right? So you know that if you need to go back, now you only need to go back 7 days because the two of you were keeping track of everything and now you can work your way back. Would you agree that that's sensible, or do you think that that's just a waste of time? It's sensible, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, and I can't do it. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Okay. I really want to, because I'm really trying to stress Agile here. Like, I can't stress that enough, right? The sooner you pick up this topic, the better it will be for you, all right? There's plenty of books on it, and I really, really do hope that you take this word away today, right? This word Agile, because it will be useful for you going forward, whether it's just you doing a project on your own or in a small team, right? Because the key to anything really is communication, right? You really need to be talking to whoever you're working with, and whether that's your boss or your co-worker or whoever, so that you're both on the same page, so that very quickly you can find these bugs, these issues, and whether you fix them or not, you're on the same page and you know about it, right? So I really do recommend using a product like Trello, if any of you have heard of that. Anyone's heard of that? A few people? I really do recommend using it. It's free, and you can set up a board, add tasks to it, add little reviews to it, and comment it, and share information really, really quickly, right? So if there's an issue, you can just communicate with who else is doing it, and both of you can see when things are being added and how it's changing, right? This is, so, what is this? This is just a bad way of writing, right? Believe it or not, over the years, when people are writing bugs into a database, a lot of them do a very bad job. Really, really bad. I mean, this is just a wall of text, right? Now, I worked on some projects where there were 8 QA testers, right? And there was 1 lead. And every day, each person is writing down about maybe 10 bugs into the system, okay? So 8 people, 10 bugs into the system every day. Each bug goes to the lead, right? So that lead has to read every single one of those bugs. That's 80 different bug reports every day. Imagine if it looked like this, right? That person, who was my boss at the time, was not impressed when he saw people doing this, because this is just a wall of text. And there are plenty of memes on the internet to illustrate this, right? And when you're communicating with another person, you really don't want to be writing things like this, right? Even if it's just your coworker, even if it's just your friend or family, like, you really need to keep whatever you're doing a bit concise and just get straight to the point. So I have an example here of something that someone sent to me, which describes an issue. But you can see it sort of looks just like an email, doesn't it? Or maybe just a Skype message, maybe, right? This person just says, hey, look, you can't seem to use uppercase characters for package names in the SDK, right? This sort of talks about the problem, right? Is this enough information to go on? You need an example, but does this capture all the information, right? Could you look back on the issue 6 months from now with a junior engineer who knows nothing about Android? Could they take this and then figure out the issue, reproduce it, or fix it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they can, maybe not, but you need to guarantee. You can't be working on maybes here. Your boss doesn't want to hear, maybe I'll come into work today, right? He doesn't want to hear that. He doesn't want to hear, maybe this bug will take me an hour to fix. He wants to hear, this bug is going to take me between 4 and 8 hours here, right? He wants some hard numbers so that he can come back to you and ask you, right? This is the same issue written by a different customer a week later, and I actually like this one, right? This person clearly sectioned everything off. He said, listen, we have this application on the Google Store. We have this version here, clear version of the SDK. He's got details of what he tried to do. And then as a follow-up, he then says, look, this is how you can attempt to work around the issue. And this is the question I have, right? It's not that many words. It's clearly sectioned off. It's clearly readable, right? And it gets to the point really quickly, right? This is sort of the level that all QA are sort of expected to be working at, right? Whether you're a QA engineer for Microsoft or Marmalade, or you're a guy working at National Rail and some guy's raising an issue, you know, you need to be as clear as possible, otherwise you're wasting the other person's time, right? But most of you probably, you're not going to be working in teams of 15. I'm guessing everyone here is maybe working in teams of 3s or 4s. Is that fairly right to guess? All right. Okay, so we got the individual in the back, team of 300. But can you raise your hand if you're maybe in a team of less than 10? Less than 10, right? So maybe something like this might be overkill, right? Spending time to document all this, but the same thing can be written in an email form, right? Which is just, look, hey Kev, so I'm writing something to myself here. Just, hey Kev, look, I'm trying to use uppercase characters. This is the SDK. Seems to be crashing. This is what I think the issue is, and a question, right? This is very clear what I'm trying to get at here. very concise, and you can see that there's very little emotion in here. Believe it or not, I've seen a lot of these type of issues raised where people put their heart and soul and their drama into these tickets. I've been trying to do this for 6 weeks and I've got 2 gray hairs because of it. Oh my God. Like, it's not good, right? It's really not good, right? And the less of it you can keep out of your work, the better it will be when you look back on it. Because you're probably going to come across an issue and need to come back in 6 months. And if you're not concise and logging all your work, you're going to have a lot of problems as you go forward, right? This also sort of relates that you really should be checking and getting into that process as soon as possible, right? So, for example, working on almost all the previous games projects I worked on, I pretty much harassed every day until I finally got producers to make sure that when builds were required on a Friday for a client, there were no submissions on a Wednesday, right? And it sounds like common sense, right? If you're going to be given a build that's important to a client, you should build it a few days in advance, make sure that there's no changes, and then submit it, right? Well, believe it or not, that's not common sense, right? There are plenty of companies out there and people who are submitting things Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at noon, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, they build it, and 5 o'clock comes, oh wait, it's crashing. And then their boss has to send that angry, upset email at everyone, send it to the client, say, sorry, we didn't mean for this to happen. I don't know what happened here. It was just, I don't know, I'm sorry. We'll get a build over the weekend. And then the poor QA have to come in on the Saturday and Sunday because no one decided to plan. And then the QA get fed maybe some pizza if they're lucky. And then it's just a spiral down the road. And it all could have been prevented if people just had a process in place on their project, right? And I can't stress, like, it really goes beyond that, right? I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard someone say, a program, I'm gonna be honest, like, full disclosure, I'm one of these people also, right? That has said, this issue worked fine on my machine. Okay, I've said that too. Oh, it worked fine when I tested it in the simulator, right? It's because people, they're so engrossed in their work, trying to fix the task, that they don't see what they don't check all these things that they're supposed to check, right? It's called solipsism, right? They're seeing this goal here. I need to get this zombie in the game. I need to get this zombie in the game. Yes, the zombie's in the game. It's Friday, I'm going home. Did you check that on a device, Jim? Did you check it on device? The answer is no, right? The same thing happens with support tickets on when people send them into the office, right? They send a support tickets on Zendesk and they say, oh, my device is crashing when I load my game, right? The very first thing that I say, immediately, right? Before I've even read half of their response, the very first thing that I've already started typing is, did you try this on other devices? That's the first thing. I've already written it in the box, right? You've sent this message and I've already started writing it, right? And then the very next thing I'm already starting to write is, did you check some other example, right? These are things that take like 30 seconds that, believe it or not, people aren't really doing. And if you get into the habit of doing these things, you know, you'll save yourself a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and a lot of headaches along the line, right? And you'll be better off for it. You know, don't be like me. I was very bad once upon a time. I still am, to be honest. But, you know, if there was 3 things I could ask you guys to just take away today, because I know that you guys are probably tired. You've been listening to everyone speak about all these subjects, and it's a lot to take in. I would say please just take away that QA is a continuous process, you know? You need to keep on it all the time, right? If you start to forget about these things, then you're gonna have problems down the line, and it's gonna cost you time, money, grades, whatever it is that's important to you, it's gonna cost you, right? And as many people should be involved as possible, If you're on your own, it doesn't matter, right? Even if it's just you and your game, you should at least be sending it to your friend or someone to just say, hey, look, can you just pop this on your device and check it runs? Just do something with it, right? It's called a sanity check. You just make sure that you're sane, you're not going crazy here, right? It worked on your machine, well, it should work on his device, right? It's the same thing. And I just want you to just please take that away today.